Can't decide and torn between a romantic, comedy, action, or an indie film to watch for the weekend? Well. Golden State Media Concepts Movie Podcast is your ultimate guide to the latest movies. Join us as we dissect the latest on the blockbusters. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Movie Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Movie Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Elizabeth Aaron. I hope you're all doing well and finding some good movies to stream. Not too long ago, I decided to try a different platform for streaming videos. I don't know if you have been sticking to the standard Netflix and Amazon Prime, which are my typical go-to platforms, but I signed up for Disney+. I'm not an enormous Disney fan, and I don't have any youngsters at home. My initial draw was to see Hamilton, and then I just decided to hold on to the membership just for a while to explore it. And one thing that I happen to enjoy on that platform happens to be their category of feel-good sports movies. If you heard me back at my July 7th podcast, you learned that I am a fan of sports movies. In that podcast, I talked about understated sports movies, which are movies that happen to have sports integrated into the story, but it is not the main thrust of the story. On the Disney platform, the focus is on feel-good sports movies, and I like that. These movies are about people or teams overcoming an obstacle, individually or together, or about reaching into themselves to go for being the best that they can possibly be. And it just so happens that some of my favorite sports movies are in this category. These all came out in the early 2000s, and I think I've seen just about all of them more than once. And frankly, I could see these over and over. They never disappoint. So today I'll be talking about the movie Bend It Like Beckham with Keira Knightley. That's in the first segment of the show. In the second segment, I'll be giving you my thoughts on the movie Remember the Titans with Denzel Washington. In the third segment of the show, I'll be giving you a review of The Rookie with Dennis Quaid. And then stick around for the end of the show when I'll be sharing my thoughts on Miracle with Kurt Russell. Now let's dive on in. As I mentioned in the first segment, I'm going to talk about the movie Bend It Like Beckham. This came out in 2002. It's an hour and 52 minutes long. It's rated PG-13, and it's considered a comedy, drama, and romance. This movie was nominated for a Golden Globe in the United States, and it was nominated for an award through the BAFTA Awards for Best British Film. Now, it did indeed win a number of awards. It won the Audience Award, Best Actress, for both the main two characters at the Bordeaux International Festival of Women in Cinema. It won the Audience Award at the Dinard British Film Festival. It won the Best Sports Movie Award at the ESPY Awards. It won the Outstanding Film Wide Release at the GLAAD Media Awards. And the list of other awards and nominations just goes on. This film was directed by Gurinder Chadha, and most of her awards for directing are for Bend It Like Beckham. But in the past, she did win Most Promising Newcomer at the Evening Standard British Film Awards for Baji on the Beach. She also won the Truly Moving Picture Award at the Heartland Film Festival. And she won Best Director of the Year for What's Cooking at the London Critics' Circle Film Awards. This movie stars Parminder Nagra. She won the Best Actress Award at the Bordeaux International Festival of Women in Cinema for Bend It Like Beckham. And she won the Best Television Actress Award for Second Generation at the Ethnic Multicultural Media Awards in the United Kingdom. She's been in quite a bit of television, including the TV series Always and Everyone, ER, The Blacklist, and 13 Reasons Why. And she's been in such movies as Bird Box and 5 Feet Apart. And this movie stars Keira Knightley. She has been nominated twice for Academy Awards, once for Best Performance by an Actress in a Supporting Role for The Imitation Game, and once for Best Performance by an Actress in a Leading Role for Pride and Prejudice. She was also nominated for Golden Globes for the same awards as well as for the movie Atonement. And she did also win the Best Actress for Bend It Like Beckham at the Bordeaux International Festival of Women in China. And she's had many other nominations and some wins. She's been in such movies as Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, Love Actually, Anna Karenina, Collateral Beauty, and Berlin, I Love You. And this movie stars the actor Jonathan Rhys-Meyers. He won a Golden Globe for Best Performance by an Actor in a Miniseries or Motion Picture Made for Television for Elvis. He won Best Actor for Damascus Cover at the Boston Film Festival. And he won the Chopard Trophy for Male Revelation at the Cannes Film Festival. He's also had other wins and many nominations. He's been in such movies as Michael Collins, Ride with the Devil, Vanity Fair, Match Point, and The 12th Man. Bend It Like Beckham is a really fun movie. It has a lot of different elements. It deals with gender roles, cultural expectations, race, friendship, family, and romance. The story starts out when Jess, who is played by Parminder Nagra, is told that she has to go shopping with her sister. Her older sister will soon be getting married, and they need to get some things for the wedding. From the get-go, we see that Jess is a fanatic about soccer. We see her in her bedroom. She has a big poster of David Beckham hanging on her wall. And on the chance that you don't know who David Beckham is, he is an amazing soccer player and big celebrity, especially in England, but also worldwide. We also see that Jess is ready to play soccer at any moment based on how she's dressed. So this is the initial setup. She already has this conflict around preferring to play soccer than helping her sister with her wedding. There's a lot of cultural expectation around a young Indian woman getting married. In Indian tradition, it seems there are a lot of rules that need to be followed. There's a responsibility for making sure the family is seen as respectable, and it seems that there are very specific roles that a woman must play in a marriage and in her family, and this definitely provides a conflict for Jess. Soccer doesn't quite fit into the picture. Although Jess is a big soccer fan, her soccer playing has pretty much been limited to just playing soccer with a bunch of guys in a local park. That is until Jules meets her. Jules, played by Keira Knightley, plays another young woman who is a soccer player, and she is actually on a women's team that has a chance of having a scout visit. Essentially, that means there may actually be a future with soccer in the picture for young women who are on this team and who are spotted. She sees Jess's skills in the park and invites Jess to try out for the team. So Jess's heart is all about being part of this team. She meets the coach, and there's already a little chemistry there. The coach is played by Jonathan Rhys-Meyers. And there's a little complication there because Jules also likes the coach. Now, the coach has said that he's off limits because as long as he is their leader, he cannot be emotionally or romantically involved with anybody on the team. But we get to see how or if this gets tested over time. Meanwhile, Jules and Jess form a great friendship. They bond over their enthusiasm for soccer and as teammates on this soccer team. But Jess runs into some trouble because she is on the soccer team without her parents' permission. She knows that they probably forbid her from being on the team. It's just not what a traditional Indian girl would do. Her mother really wants her to learn about Indian traditions, learn how to make Indian food, and be there every step of the way for her sister in her special time prior to getting married. Jess, with Jules' help, keeps defying her parents and finding ways to stay on the team. And the film culminates where Jess's sister is getting married on the same day as the soccer championship game, where there's going to be a scout looking for recruits for playing soccer in the United States for a renowned university in California. Big questions crop up as to whether or not Jess's sister is actually going to get married because Jess's behavior may be impacting her family's reputation. Will Jess's family finally come around and support her in what it is that she actually wants to do, even though it isn't within Indian tradition? There's the question as to whether Jess and Jules have a strong enough relationship to withstand some major conflicts. And is there room for romance with either of these soccer players with the coach? The acting in this movie is really great. There's a lot of fun scenes, a lot of humor. Some of the circumstances, even though they are realistic, have a kind of ridiculousness about them. And it makes even the most conflicted scenes pretty much a joy to watch. The characters are really well drawn. We learn a lot about Jess. She is the main character of this movie. We find out that her love for soccer and her big heart are so strong that she was really willing to put things on the line and take a risk for going after what she wants. And Jules, we learn, has a very overbearing and controlling mother. She's played by Juliet Stevenson, who is a great actress. We get to see how she deals with this mother, and how she also goes after what she wants. It does seem, at the very least, that her father is quite supportive. And Jonathan Rhys-Meyers does a wonderful job as the coach. You can see that he himself has a dilemma around maintaining his role as coach, yet also being interested in the women on his team. He does his best to hold the line, and yet, as with any human, he has to learn how to deal with temptation. Jess's parents are also well carved. These characters maintain their Indian tradition, and yet talk about some of the resentment they hold about how they've been treated while living in England. In this movie, the Indian culture is almost its own character. It's very beautiful seeing all the colors involved with getting this wedding together. And yet it does have strict rules and boundaries that need to be kept. It's something that especially the younger characters keep bumping up against. This movie also introduces the idea of homosexual love. At the time this came out, it was somewhat risky to do that. There's a point where some of the characters are mistakenly thought to be homosexual, and this causes a big brouhaha within the Indian community. And there's also a young man who finally finds his courage to admit to one person that he is still in the closet. And being Indian, this is a tough place for him to be in. This is very important. It allows many audience members who might not normally relate to this movie something that they can hold on to and really understand. The story of this movie is really a fun one. The flow of the scenes works really well. One thing leads to the next, and often I wasn't able to guess ahead what was going to happen in the following scene. This movie is so well crafted that I couldn't really find any holes in the story, and it keeps me absorbed and wanting to find out what is going to happen next. I'm constantly rooting for Jess, and I want to find out if her dream is going to come true. Is she actually going to get a shot at being the kind of soccer player that she wants to become? She clearly has an innate talent for playing soccer. She can outdo all of the guys she's playing with in the park. And she clearly makes a place for herself as a star on this somewhat semi-professional team. And what comes to pass within her family is this question as to when somebody has a gift, even if it's not within their tradition, what do they do with the gift? Because clearly it was something that was God-given. In this case, it really did depend on the parents overcoming some of their inhibitions in their beliefs in order to even consider letting Jess pursue what her dream is. One thing that I did reflect on was the fact that this movie was made back in 2002. The movie itself appears very modern and not very dated. The characters have cell phones, and the sets are pretty simple. They're typical stores, homes, soccer fields, so there was nothing that looked unusual. And yet the world today is such a different place. Women's rights and the way women are treated is different. The rights of LGBTQI people are very different, and technology is very different. There's also a scene at the airport, and security is dealt with differently than how it was back then. In that way, this movie is somewhat dated. I wouldn't say that it bothered me or distracted me, but it did make me certainly think about how much easier things were back then, what a different time we're in now. It made me kind of crave those days. With all of the kinds of conflicts that Jess was facing, things I think for her today would be even tougher. Something I really liked about this story was how each character had some inner thing that they had to come to terms with. And once they were able to do that, then the story was able to move forward. For example, when Jess's father first came to England, he was a star cricket player. He had had much success in India and thought when he came to England he'd just be able to pick up where he left off. But because he was of Indian descent, he was not taken seriously, and he wasn't able to pursue being a professional cricket player. This is something he became resentful of, and now here was Jess pushing that button for him. She's finding a way to be a professional soccer player, but he didn't get to live his dream. And we have to see him work out whether or not he is going to allow her to pursue her dream, or if he wants to hold her back because of the beliefs he formed because he wasn't able to pursue his. The way the story moves forward really depends upon him, in part, about how he comes to terms with his past. In terms of the coach, he has a history with his father, and it seems that coming to terms with his father, maybe attempting to make peace with his father, is going to help him move forward. And this impacts his decision about whether or not he's going to continue to actually coach a girls' team. And in terms of Jules, she has to come to terms with her feelings for the coach, as well as dealing with her mother. Her mother and her over-the-top controlling is very embarrassing for Jules. She and her mother couldn't be more different. Another thing that I like about this movie is that there's so much going on. You get to know these characters rather deeply. You appreciate the challenges that they have, and you get involved with them, wanting to cheer them on. And despite the challenges, this is not a dark movie. There's actually kind of a lightness about it, and yet you still get to see these characters grow as they face their circumstances. The first time I saw this movie, I just fell in love with it. I wanted to see it again and again. I really appreciated everything about it. Seeing it again now after a number of years, I think the story holds its water. The movie didn't feel quite as big as it had when I first saw it, but I did continue to love the characters and feel like I could see this movie again. So I definitely recommend this movie, and on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being a most excellent film, I would give it a 9. If this was back when it first came out, I'd probably give it a 10, but because of some of the dating that I experienced, it just wasn't quite as potent to me. But if it's going to be the first time that you see it, I think maybe it could deserve a higher number, but for now, I'm going to settle for a 9. Now stay tuned for the next segment of the show, when I'll be talking about the movie Remember the Titans after the break.
Want to know the latest and hottest music hitting the airwaves? Don't be left out. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Music Podcast. It keeps you on the loop with everything you need to know from pop, rock, hip-hop, and the top 40. And we'll throw in news of your favorite artists, concert and tour dates, and so much more. Listen no further, because this is the gold standard in music podcast.
Thank you for joining the second segment of the show. I'm your host, Elizabeth Aaron. In the last segment, I talked about the movie Bend It Like Beckham. I'm now going to discuss the movie Remember the Titans. This movie came out in the year 2000. It's an hour and 53 minutes long. It's rated PG, and it's considered to be a biography, drama, and sport movie. And this movie is also based on real life. This movie has won a number of awards. Denzel Washington won Best Actor through the BET Awards, as well as the Black Reel Awards for this movie. The production team of this movie won a Feature Film Award through the Christopher Awards. At the NAACP Image Awards, this movie won Outstanding Motion Picture and Outstanding Actor in a Motion Picture for Denzel Washington. This movie also won the Human Rights Award through the Political Film Society USA, and it earned many nominations. The director of this movie is Boaz Yakin. He is an award-winning director, having won Best Director for the movie Death in Love at the Boston Film Festival, Best Film, shared with several others for the movie Aviva through the Choreoscope International Dance Film Festival, the Dramatic Award for the movie Fresh at the Sundance Film Festival, and a Bronze Award for the movie Fresh at the Tokyo International Film Festival. While probably known more as a writer, he is also the director of such movies as Uptown Girls, Safe, Max, and Boarding School. As previously mentioned, this movie stars Denzel Washington, and he is an Academy Award winner. He won Oscars for Best Actor in a Supporting Role for the movie Glory, and Best Actor in a Leading Role for Training Day. He's also won some Golden Globes. He has won the Best Performance by an Actor in a Supporting Role in the motion picture Glory, and Best Performance by an Actor in a Motion Picture Drama for The Hurricane, as well as winner of the Cecil B. DeMille Award. And he has won Best Actor for Malcolm X at the 2020 Awards, as well as Best Actor for Fences at the AARP Movies for Grown-Ups Awards. These among many other wins and nominations. He's also known for such movies as A Soldier Story, Mo Better Blues, Mississippi Masala, Philadelphia, Devil in a Blue Dress, Antoine Fisher, and Flight. This movie stars Will Patton. He's been nominated for Best Supporting Actor for The Postman at the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films USA, as well as Best Supporting Actor for The Mothman Prophecies at the Fangoria Chainsaw Awards. He's known for such movies as No Way Out, The Spitfire Grill, A Mighty Heart, and Sweet Thing. The actor Wood Harris is also in this film. He has won Outstanding Supporting Actor for TV Movie Limited Series for the New Edition story at the Black Reel Awards for television. And he's been in such movies as Paid in Full, Joy Road, Ant-Man, Creed, and Blade Runner 2049. Ryan Hurst is also an actor in this movie, and he is a winner. It's for Merit Honorary Award for The Walking Dead at the Cine Euphoria Awards. He has also won Best Actor in a Supporting Role in a Series, Miniseries, or Motion Picture made for television for Sons of Anarchy at the Satellite Awards. He's been in such movies as Saving Private Ryan, Patch Adams, Rango, A Million Little Pieces, and quite a few television series, including Bates Motel and CSI Miami. The movie also includes some other known actors that have some small parts. They include Ryan Gosling and Hayden Panettiere. There's a lot going on in this movie, and this movie has a huge focus on race. According to the Internet Movie Database, the summary of this movie is the true story of a newly appointed African-American coach and his high school team on their first season as a racially integrated unit. Denzel Washington's character plays Coach Herman Boone. He's brought on as an African-American coach, and the town that this high school is in, where he's going to be coach, is very racially divided. We learn that there are lots of political reasons why Coach Boone is brought on board, and somewhat unexpectedly, it really tests this town. When the coach comes on board, the whole Black community is so excited. They think finally the Black students are going to have a fair shake at being football players. Meanwhile, Coach Boone is displacing another coach. It's Coach Bill Yost, a white coach, and he's just about to be voted into the Hall of Fame. He's continually led the football team to championships, and the students who'd been under this coach are very resentful. They don't understand why there needs to be a change in coaches when their coach has been so successful in leading them to victories. And so now not only is there a clash because there is a new coach who is Black, but there's also just the general clash because Black people have been outcast in this town. To get things off on track with the football team, which is now made up of Black and white students, the coach has a summer camp in mind. This is a training camp to make sure that the football team is off to a great start when the season begins. And it turns out this camp is a huge test as to the leadership that Coach Boone is going to bring. Considering the racial differences between the students, it doesn't look like things are going to bode very well. But Coach Boone seems pretty prepared. He has been around the block and he understands about the racial differences, so he makes sure that this team understands that they are one team. And it's high time that they become colorblind. There are a lot of tensions at the beginning. There's fighting and bickering and a lot of outcasting. But there are two students on the football team, one Black and one white, each kind of heading up a part of the team. And when they get into it, they finally get to some truth. And they actually start having a budding friendship. And by the end of the camp, everybody is appreciating each other and learning about each other, and they return home a much different team than when they left. They're a team that has come together and is working together. Yet this is very different from how the Black and white people are treated in the town. And the more this team wins and they do it together, the more the racism in the town is just looking plain silly. Now it's interesting that this football team is racially diverse, yet it plays against teams that are all white. And it seems that this team is pretty motivated to demonstrate that they can be strong and get along In fact, because of their differences. Because of their differences, they have something to prove. And because a lot of people are against them, because they are a black and white team, this team digs into its spirit and to its strength even deeper. Throughout the movie, there are lots of lessons that are learned. Because now the black and white students have a fondness and a respect for each other that no one else in the town seems to have, students hang out together, their racial differences seem to flare up in each other's faces. In other words, they get to experience what it's like to walk in the shoes of someone of a different color, and they get to see how unfair it is that people are treated differently just based on their skin color. There's one scene where Julius Campbell, played by Wood Harris, he's the black leader of the football team, he goes to visit the home of Gary Bertier, played by Ryan Hurst, and he is the white leader of the football team. So here he is in this affluent white neighborhood, the only black person around, and a police car pulls up, and he is terrified. You can see the look in his eyes. The police officer rolls to a stop, looks at him, and Julius has no idea if his life is in danger or not. I won't say what happens in case you choose to see the movie, but this movie came out 20 years ago now, and we see from what's going on in the world today that this is not something that has gone away yet. Perhaps on some level this movie demonstrated what does happen. Maybe it's one story of many that have been told in film or in books or in other ways to help raise attention about this. But what we're learning is that it's only now, when more and more protests are happening, that perhaps the message is getting through more. There's another time where there are some football players, both white and black, that are going to head into a cafe. And the black students really don't want to go in. They think that they're not welcome there. And the white student, well, he's actually new to the area, but he really encourages them to go in. He doesn't understand why there would be some kind of prejudice, because he's from California, and I think things are a little bit more liberal there. And while I won't go into detail about what happens, the black students knew what was going on, and they felt very hurt and very set up by the white student, because he just didn't have a clue. And what happened really didn't bode well. There are also scenes where we see Coach Boone being really hard on the football players. He pushes them physically hard, he's hard on them emotionally, and this is a very different style than what Coach Yost used. So Coach Boone and Coach Yost keep getting into conflict about this. And it's tough because Coach Boone is the new coach in town, and he is black, and he's not completely accepted. And Coach Yost had been a very successful coach before Coach Boone came along. But Coach Boone is the one with the power. And he finally calls Coach Yost to the carpet. Because Coach Yost keeps taking some of the boys aside, especially some of the black boys, and trying to make light of what is going on, of how hard Coach Boone is on them. He wants to make it easier on them. And finally, Coach Boone explains to him that he's not doing the black boys any favors, that life is tough for them, and they need to experience what that's like so they know how to persevere. This was definitely a wake-up call for Coach Yost. Meanwhile, there's a lot of tests that happen for this team, and not only on the football field, but especially in their relationships. At one point, something happens to Gary Bertier, and it really tests the friendship of him with some of the other football players, in particular the black ones. At this point, he'd become very close friends with Julius, and the movie gets to show how friendship doesn't have to do with color. It has to do with the person and the character. This is a movie that I have seen a number of times, and every time I enjoy it. I do wish the circumstances were truly different, and yet this is a movie about overcoming. It's overcoming adversity, it's overcoming mental blocks, it's overcoming differences, and it's about how being the best you can be can make a difference. And the acting is great. There are a lot of scenes with lots of tensions, and every scene seems believable, and all of the tensions between the characters is also believable. There are even some very young girls in this movie. There's Hayden Panettiere, which I mentioned before, and then Coach Boone has a daughter who's about the same age. Hayden Panettiere plays Coach Yost's daughter, and she is just a tomboy, and she loves football. Meanwhile, Denzel Washington's daughter, she loves dressing up and wearing nail polish and She really doesn't care a whole lot about football. She's probably much more interested in the cheerleaders than the football players. And they're also both different colors. And they also get to learn about how racism gets in the way of relationships and things moving forward. We see these two girls working it out together, and at the same time, they get to experience racism firsthand. There's a point where Hayden Panettiere is over at Coach Boone's house. They are talking football, and then an attack happens on Coach Boone's house because he is the black coach in town. The coach makes sure that Hayden Panettiere is protected just like his own children, and Coach Yost is thinking maybe they shouldn't come over so often. And Coach Boone talks about how, well, maybe he needs to learn more about racism because this is something he deals with all the time. But then we get to see the racism dealt with among the football players, and in particular with Gary and with Julius. We get to see it among the coaches as well as among the leadership within the school. And no one would really take this team seriously or give it a second thought if they weren't so successful. The fact that they are, the townspeople have to see things in a different light than they expect to. They wanted Coach Boone and the team to fail under him, and they're not. And on some level, all of the characters are tested around this. Because there is so much conflict, it gives the actors a lot to work with, and they have a lot of inner feelings that they can probably access in order to play their roles so well. The story is a strong one, and it is based on a true story, and in that way, it makes it even more potent. The story is well crafted, the scenes are well crafted. It's the kind of movie that over and over as I watch it, I still get caught up in what's going to happen. And I had forgotten a bunch of the things that had happened from the previous time that I saw it, and it was refreshing just to see it again and be reminded. Also, because this is an historical story, it doesn't feel dated in any way. And as I said, because some of these issues are still very relevant today, unfortunately, you can still gain something from watching it and learn more about racism and the issues of Black lives. So I would definitely recommend this movie. It has so many aspects to it. It's a lot of emotional ups and downs, and there's also a lot to learn from watching what goes on in this story. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being a most excellent movie, I think I would give this one a 10. I find some movies that deal with racism seem to kind of hit you over the head with the issue. In this case, because it is so much based on circumstances and the relationships between the characters, it didn't feel like it was heavy-handed, and yet the message definitely came through. And I appreciate that in doing that, it actually makes the movie and the issues that it's dealing with more accessible to the audience. As a result, it is a good and entertaining watch. Now stay tuned for the next segment of the show, when I'll be looking at the movie The Rookie after the break.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome to the third segment of the show. I'm your host, Elizabeth Aaron. In the last segment, I talked about the movie Remember the Titans. I'm now going to discuss the movie The Rookie. This movie came out in 2002. It is considered a drama, it's a family movie, and also clearly a sports movie. It's 2 hours and 7 minutes long, and it's rated G. This movie has also won a number of awards. It won the Top Box Office Films Award at the ASCAP Film and Television Music Awards. It won the Cammy Award at the Character and Morality in Entertainment Awards. It won Best Sports Movie at the ESPY Awards. It won Truly Moving Sound Award at the Heartland International Film Festival. It won Best Family Film at the Las Vegas Film Critics Society Awards. And it received nominations at other awards. This movie was directed by John Lee Hancock. He won the Christopher Award at the Christopher Awards for the feature film My Dog Skip. He also won the Award for Creative Impact in Directing for the movie Saving Mr. Banks at the Palm Springs International Film Festival. He also won the Star of Texas Award at the Texas Film Awards, and that is an award that puts him in the Texas Film Hall of Fame. The protagonist in this movie, Jimmy Morris, is played by Dennis Quaid. Dennis Quaid has been nominated for Golden Globes and even an Emmy Award. His wins include Best Supporting Actor in Far From Heaven. He won this award through several outlets, including the Film Independent Spirit Awards, the Chicago Film Critics Association Awards, the New York Film Critics Circle Awards, and the Online Film Critics Society Awards. He's also won some awards for his appearance in The Big Easy, including Best Male Lead at the Film Independent Spirit Awards and the Valladolid International Film Festival. He's also won such awards as Male Star of the Year at the Show West Convention, USA, and Lifetime Achievement Award at the Houston Film Critics Society Awards. And he shared the outstanding performance by the cast of a theatrical motion picture with the rest of the cast members for the movie Traffic, and that is a Screen Actors Guild Award. He's been in such movies as Breaking Away, Stripes, Great Balls of Fire, Something to Talk About, The Parent Trap, Smart People, Footloose, and The Words. This movie also stars Rachel Griffiths, who was nominated for an Oscar for Best Actress in a Supporting Role for the movie Hillary and Jackie. She won a Golden Globe for Best Performance by an Actress in a Supporting Role in a Series, Miniseries, or Motion Picture Made for Television for 6 Feet Under. And she's also won some awards for directing, including awards for the movie Tulip, which she also wrote. She's been in both a lot of television and movies. Her movies include Muriel's Wedding, My Best Friend's Wedding, Ned Kelly, Saving Mr. Banks, Hacksaw Ridge, and Ride Like a Girl. In this movie, she plays Lori Banks, who is Jimmy, our protagonist's wife. And lastly, I'd like to highlight Brian Cox, who plays Jimmy's father in this movie. He is a winner of a Golden Globe for Best Performance by an Actor in a Television Series Drama for the TV series Succession. He is also the winner of a Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Miniseries or a Movie for Nuremberg. He has won a BAFTA Award in Scotland for Outstanding Achievement in a Film. At the Boston Film Festival, he was part of a cast to win the Best Ensemble Cast Award for The Etruscan Smile. And he won Best Actor for the movie L.I.E. at the Boston Society of Film Critics Awards. And he's won a number of other awards for some of these same roles at other festivals. This movie starts out with the story of young Jimmy Morris. He is probably about 9 or 10 years old, and we see him moving around with his family. His father works in the military, and he keeps getting changed posts, and it seems that as soon as they seem to settle into one place to live, they end up moving to another place to live. At last, they land in this small town in Texas. In these childhood scenes, we see Jimmy does his favorite thing, which is to pitch a ball. He pitches into a fence, he pitches in the rain. He lives and breathes baseball. And all he wants to do is be settled in one place so that he can be on a team and show his true talent. But not only do they move around a lot, but his father really is not very attentive to him. He doesn't care to encourage Jimmy to use his gift. He doesn't seem concerned about whether or not Jimmy has opportunities to play ball. He seems to prescribe to tough love, if it's love at all. There's a sense that Jimmy feels really resentful of his father. And when they land in Texas, in the middle of nowhere, finally it's a place where it seems they're going to be settled for some time, and yet it's the one place that doesn't have a baseball team. There's a scene where Jimmy rides his bike into town because he needs to pick something up at the general store. He meets the owner of the general store, who's a really kind guy, so different from Jimmy's father. And he picks up on the fact that while Jimmy asks to look for socks, it's not really the thing that Jimmy wants. Ultimately, he wants a baseball glove. And that's not something that they carry at the store. And he offers to look it up in a catalog. We get to see that this is a budding friendship between this older gentleman and Jimmy. He also shares with Jimmy the fact that while there isn't a baseball team in town, baseball was not new to the town. And he shares a story about how baseball was part of the town's history. Next thing you know, Jimmy is looking for the location of where ball had been played in the past, and he uses that as a place to work out and practice on his own. This has all been a flashback at this point, and then we get to see Jimmy as an adult. He's married, has 3 kids. He's a teacher at the local high school, as well as the baseball coach. So now there is indeed a baseball team. We also learn that Jimmy had suffered an accident that had injured his shoulder, and it was the shoulder of his pitching arm. And so he'd been very protective of his arm. There are times he'd toss a ball around, try out his arm here and there, but he'd always be careful not to overdo it, and he would never tell his wife that he was going to do it. He always told her after the fact, if he told her at all. This became a little bit of a point of contention, because she didn't understand why he wasn't just sharing that information with her. But as Jimmy starts tossing the ball around, he starts to see that the talent that he thought he had has never really gone away, even with his injured shoulder. It seems that it has healed, and he'd been told that he probably would never pitch again, but he's coming to the realization that maybe he has something here. So one of the members of his team that he coaches had seen him out in a field pitching a ball and asked him to stay after practice one day and pitch the ball to him. What comes out of this is a discovery that he really does have something with his arm. But Jimmy doesn't have a true reality check of how good his pitching is and whether it's worthy of anything more than playing with his team. Meanwhile, his team does a horrible job at its first game of the year, and Jimmy is incensed about this. He wants to challenge his team to be the best they can be, to use their talents to their utmost, while his team calls him on the fact that he's not doing that himself. They see that he has something with his pitching, and so they turn that around on him. He uses age as an excuse and talks about how he missed his window of opportunity already. But they say that they will do their utmost to have a winning season, and if they do, he needs to promise something in return, which is to actually try out as a pitcher for the bigger leagues. He reluctantly gives in, and this truly starts the plot of the story. We get to see Jimmy pitching to his team. He pitches to them with his fastball, and this helps the batters really learn their skills. It's like if they can hit Jimmy's ball, then they can hit any competitor's ball. And as a result, they've gotten really great, and they start winning games. And there comes a point where Jimmy finally has to own up to his end of the bargain. And what we essentially find out is how big Jimmy's talent really is, how his family supports him or doesn't, and the movie brings up the issue of ageism. Here Jimmy is quite a bit older than the other players who are trying out. He's also straddled with 3 children during the tryouts. And what we get to see is it doesn't actually matter how old you are, as long as you can bring it. And in fact, because Jimmy goes back to working on fulfilling his dream, a lot of healing takes place. He can let go of resentments, and people can let go of their expectations of him because he's finally doing what he wanted to do. This is a movie that is uplifting. It's about overcoming the odds. It's about never giving up, no matter how old you are. It's about being a role model when you are going after the thing that you love the most. There is an important scene where Jimmy is talking with his wife about the fact that he may be able to take his pitching to a higher level than he expected. His wife is, one, scared that he's going to re-injure himself. She's also concerned that she's going to be left taking care of the kids on her own. And if Jimmy's going to go for it, it means that he's probably going to need to turn down a job offer that he had that's going to bring in a lot more money for his family because they are struggling right now. So Jimmy contends with, does he go after his dream? Or is he the responsible grown-up doing the thing that is expected of him? But as his wife sits with this question, she comes back and she talks to him about it. And then the deeper question comes up. What is being the responsible adult? Is it living your life to the fullest? What would it mean to their son if he actually showed up and followed his dream? It could be that he's role modeling something for his son, and also not disappointing his son, not giving the message that if you don't follow your dream and follow the thing that you're most talented at, you won't have missed out, because he would have missed out. That was one of the more poignant moments in the movie. There's also the conflict that Jimmy has with his dad. You actually see their relationship through the years. And as Jimmy starts entertaining the idea of going after his dream as an adult and seeing that he can indeed have it, it opens up a door for him to be able to communicate more with his own father. He doesn't have a need to hold on to the resentment so much anymore because he still has the potential to have his dream. He didn't necessarily miss that window of opportunity, and he can't necessarily blame his father for that. So those are some really key messages. The acting is really wonderful in this movie. Just in the scenes that I talked about a moment ago, as Jimmy talks with his wife, you really see the love between them. They care a lot about each other. And it's also clear that they have flaws. Jimmy doesn't tell her about him going behind her back and trying to pitch the ball, and she struggles with letting go of control. And yet they accept each other and appreciate each other and where they're coming from. The scenes with Jimmy's father, especially when he's an adult, you see the awkwardness, you see how they're reserved and holding on to things. It's a little painful to watch. They just don't seem to have the wherewithal or the skills to be able to communicate. And there's a lot of resentment that's built up over time. A little bit on both their parts. And these two actors play this out expertly. The tension and the emotion that came out of those scenes was really palpable. Now, overall, I felt this movie was well cast, and I do think that Dennis Quaid did a great job. However, I feel that he was a little bit too old for the part. I think he was trying to carry off being a 37-year-old, yet by my calculation, in reality, he was actually 48. So my hat's off to him for playing such a rigorous physical role, but I just didn't buy that he was that young. Also, he and the boy who played the young Jimmy, I felt didn't look anything alike. So when Dennis Quaid did pop up as the adult Jimmy, I was questioning that. I was scratching my head, wondering, who is this? Now, I will say there is one advantage to having an older actor play this role. And not that Dennis Quaid is older, just a little old for this part. He's also a very experienced actor. In a scene, there were moments where he knew exactly where to hold back his emotion or tried to hide it, which really evoked a lot of emotion from me as the watcher. I felt this came out especially when he'd call home when he was on the road, in some of the scenes with his father, and also with his wife. At the same time, there were a few scenes where I felt that he kind of overdid it. There's a point where his wife comes to see him at the ball field, and he is kind of mesmerized by her, and I think he holds a look with her a little bit too long. Something that I really liked about this movie is the fact that Jimmy's character, we know from the very beginning, really does have a lot of talent throwing a ball. He spends night and day doing it as a child, and you can tell that it's something that Jimmy really craves when he's an adult. You know that it's in his blood, so we as the audience have this background, and we are just rooting for him. We want him to succeed. We want to see his dream finally come true. And that hooks us throughout the rest of the film to see what is going to happen, and is he going to truly meet his potential. The storyline is a good one. I didn't find holes in it. I did find some of it was a bit contrived. I would say I think of Disney movies often as being contrived. In some of the other sports movies that I'm talking about on today's podcast, I didn't usually find that to be the case. But in this one, I did find that to happen a little bit more. And I would say that the scenes that I think were most contrived were probably the scenes with the father, because it felt like the story was really trying to plot out this relationship over time. So I came to expect to see those specific scenes. And perhaps some of the scenes where the team is playing baseball, some of that may have seemed a little expected. And yet I did appreciate the twist of this movie. It wasn't the typical movie of the championship team and can these underdogs come back and prove themselves. This really was Jimmy's story, and about how his impact as someone who is gifted in pitching actually affected many other people within his community. I also appreciated in this movie that there were a bunch of comedic moments. These were usually set up around the fact that Jimmy was older. We get to see him at the baseball tryouts with his 3 children, changing his baby daughter's diaper. That is definitely an unusual sight. No one else there was doing that same thing. And there was also some comedy around his team, making fun of him and his ability to really throw the ball until he really starts turning the heat on. And then there's also a joke around how grass won't grow on the baseball diamond at the high school, and what has to happen in order for the grass to finally grow. And the grass seems to be symbolic of the growth of the team as well. This is definitely an enjoyable movie. It's uplifting. Like with the other movies that I'm talking about today, I have seen this one before, and it did hold up watching it another time. So I would recommend it. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most excellent movie, I would rate this movie an 8. It's a good movie. It has a lot going for it. But when I think about it and compared to the other movies that I watched for the podcast this week, this one didn't hold up quite as well as the others, I'd say. Now stay tuned for the final segment of the show, when I'll be talking about the movie Miracle.
Watching TV has changed over time. Streaming has become the new norm. That's why Golden State Media Concepts television podcast dives headfirst to the world of cord cutting. Want to be on the loop of what's hot in Netflix? Or if it's not a preference, what about original shows in Hulu? We've got you covered. Join us as we fill in the blank and talk about movies to stream and what show you should be binging. This is the Golden State Media Concepts television podcast.
Welcome to the last segment of the show. I'm your host, Elizabeth Aaron. In the prior segment, I talked about the movie The Rookie. I'm now going to discuss the movie Miracle. This movie came out in 2004. It is 2 hours and 15 minutes long. It's rated PG, and it's considered a biography, a drama, and historical. This movie is based on a real experience. The description in the Internet Movie Database says, the true story of Herb Brooks, the player-turned-coach who led the 1980 U.S. Olympic hockey team to victory over the seemingly invincible Soviet squad. And that really covers this movie well. From start to finish, this movie is indeed about how are the Americans going to defeat the Soviets in hockey in the Olympics. This movie did win some awards. It won the Best Intergenerational Film at the AARP Movies for Grown-Ups Awards, and it won the Best Sports Movie at the ESPY Awards. This movie was directed by Gavin O'Connor. He is an award-winning director. He won Outstanding TV Movie Limited Series for 7 Seconds at the Black Reel Awards for television, and it was shared with a number of others who were involved with that movie. He also won the Spirit of Independence Award for Tumbleweeds at the Fort Lauderdale International Film Festival, and that was a jury award. And he won the Long Island International Film Expo Achievement Award, which was a shared award. He also won the Dramatic Award at the Sundance Film Festival, also for Tumbleweeds. He's directed such movies as Pride and Glory, Warrior, Jane Got a Gun, and The Way Back. Kurt Russell plays the protagonist in this movie, Herb Brooks, and I have to say that of all of the Kurt Russell movies I've seen, I've never seen him do a character transformation like he did in this movie. He did a fantastic job. Kurt Russell has been nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Performance by an Actor in a Supporting Role in a Motion Picture for Silkwood, and for a Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Limited Series or a Special for Elvis. He won a Lifetime Career Award at the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films USA. He won the Favorite Actor Adventure Drama Award for Executive Decision at the Blockbuster Entertainment Awards. He won the Best Actor Award for Bone Tomahawk at the Fangoria Chainsaw Awards. And he was one of many to win the Ensemble of the Year Award for the movie The Hateful Eight at the Hollywood Film Awards. He's actually been in quite a bit of television, but in terms of his movies, he's been in such films as The Thing, Swing Shift, The Mean Season, Tequila Sunrise, Tombstone, Forrest Gump, Stargate, Vanilla Sky, Poseidon, and Furious 7. And this movie stars Patricia Clarkson. She was nominated for Best Actress in a Supporting Role for Pieces of April, and she actually won a Golden Globe for Best Performance by an Actress in a Supporting Role in the limited series, or motion picture made for television for Sharp Objects. She also won a Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Guest Actress in a Drama Series for 6 Feet Under. She won a Best Supporting Actress Award for The Green Mile through the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Movies USA. She won the Best Supporting Actress Award for Pieces of April, as well as the Station Agent, through the Boston Society of Film Critics Awards, and she won Best Supporting Actress for The Party through the British Independent Film Awards, this among many other awards and nominations. She's also been in quite a bit of television as well as movies. In terms of movies, she's been in such films as The Deadpool, Far From Heaven, Dogville, All the King's Men, Phoebe in Wonderland, Friends with Benefits, and Almost Love. In this movie stars Noah Emmerich. He won the Best Ensemble Acting Award with the cast of Super 8 at the Phoenix Film Critics Society Awards, and he's been nominated for a good number of other awards, in particular for his role in the TV series The Americans. While he has also been in quite a bit of television, the movies he's been in include The Truman Show, Wind Talkers, Beyond Borders, Little Children, Pride and Glory, and Blood Ties. So as mentioned earlier, this movie is about one man who used to be a hockey player, and he takes on the task of building a team that he hopes is going to defeat the Russians, who for the past 20 years have been undefeated, and this is in the Olympics. The movie starts with Herb Brooks meeting with the Olympic Ice Hockey Committee, trying to decide who is going to be the lead coach of the U.S. hockey team for men. Herb seems to have a pretty unconventional approach, but he makes it very clear from the very beginning that his goal is to defeat the Russians. If they can defeat the Russians, they can defeat all the other teams and they can be the champions. And yet the way he was to go about it is pretty unconventional. He explains how if he followed the convention, he'd be in the same place as they were over the last years in the Olympics. They had to do something different in order to be able to defeat the Russians. His plan is to pull together a team based on who the players are, not necessarily the fact that they are the best players. It's how this group of men in particular can come together as a team that's going to make the difference. So Herb doesn't think he'll really be selected by the Olympic Committee. He thinks that he is unconventional, but a big surprise, and it goes without saying or we wouldn't have a movie, Herb gets the job. And the first half of the movie is a lot about his unconventional ways of choosing the team and having the team practice. While the Olympic Committee agreed that it was okay for him to have an unconventional method, when the reality hit of what he was actually doing and how unconventional it truly was, there was a lot of controversy. There's a lot of pushback by the team doctor as well as his assistant coach played by Noah Emmerich, and in many cases the players too. But Herb keeps his standards very high. He needs to know that these players are committed. He tests them and he tests them. He pushes them to their limits physically, mentally, and while some of the players had a past together and some animosity, he made sure that they understood that that was in the past. So like with Remember the Titans, the team players need to come together and get on the same page, and when they do, they have an amazing camaraderie. Everyone finally has each other's back. In this case, it isn't a team that deals with racism, but it is a team that has a common enemy. And these Olympics come at a time when the world is really on edge. There's a lot of stress around our relationship with Russia. People are having a tough time, and having a team that could possibly beat the Russians would do so much for the country's morale. Now, by today's standards, this is a bit of a longer movie. It's over 2 hours, and most movies these days are ranging more like around an hour and a half. I have no problem whatsoever staying engrossed in this movie. I've also seen this movie a number of times, and every time I get sucked in. And I think there are several reasons why this movie succeeds. We want to understand what Herb's playbook is. What is his unconventional process? And is he going to actually help this team win at the Olympics? Something else that helped keep me hooked is Herb had 7 months, one to build the team, but also to pull the team together to make it a winning team. So on one hand, we kind of know what Herb is up to, but we don't know how he's going to do it. So that is one hook. Another hook is to see if the team that he pulled together is going to succeed. We get to see his process in choosing the team, and he does it very quickly. And it makes you want to know, how does he know that this is the group? How is he so sure? And at the start, as a team is coming together, you kind of wonder, how in the world are they going to be winners in the Olympics based on how they're interacting? So the next hook is, can the team itself pull itself together? Another hook is the fact that we know from history that this was a winning team. So we have a sense of what the outcome is already going to be. But if you weren't at those Olympics or didn't see them in real life, then you also are curious about, how is that game going to go? How are they actually going to beat the Russians when so many odds are against them? Something else that I really enjoyed in this movie, and that did keep me wanting to watch, was the relationship between Herb and his wife, Patty, played by Patricia Clarkson. This couple has no problem dealing with conflict. In fact, just about every scene we see them in conflict, and although we can tell that they have great love for each other and great camaraderie, rare is it that we see them in peace. They seem to get that they are both about trying to make each other better. And in this case in particular, it is Patty who really has Herb's back, even at times when she feels a little bit resentful. I feel like they show a very healthy relationship, and I appreciated that the movie did not sugarcoat their relationship. The acting in this movie is also just great. Every character is spot on, very believable. I feel in particular Kurt Russell did just an outstanding job. He embodied the character of Herb Brooks. I could not recognize Kurt Russell in there at all. He was completely Herb Brooks. And Herb is the kind of guy who is kind of insular. He's introverted, it seems. We also learn at one point that the way he's treating this team is like nothing he'd ever been seen doing before in terms of coaching a team. He was a coach for a college hockey team before this. So he keeps to himself, acts like a master coach, demonstrates that he has a ruthlessness about him. He's a true leader, and yet he's also a human being. We learn that years before, he himself had been cut from the Olympic hockey team, and he never got to live out that dream. And so when it comes to forming this team, he makes it clear at the very start that he has 26 players, and by the time the games happen, there will be 20. And so the people who he has chosen have to fight for their spots. And when it comes to the time where he has to get his final 20 and let his final one player go, there's an amazing scene where there's so much emotion under the surface. There's not much dialogue, but a lot is said in that scene. It's very poignant. There's also a scene over Christmas when the whole group gets together and has a celebration. Herb is there and he's given a gift. The team wants him to say a few words, and he just says he's not a man of many words. And yet, in saying that, the way he presents it, you can tell that he is full of admiration for this team, that there's so much more going on for him. They have a love story, and it's clear that he knows what is in the team's best interest is for him to not get too personally involved. And so he holds back, and yet, just showing up the way that he did says all that needs to be said. And Kurt Russell just carries this through as a through line throughout the movie. Now, something else that's interesting about this movie is they had to have gotten actors on the team who are real hockey players. The way these players moved on the ice, it was pretty amazing. And when I looked on the Internet Movie Database in the trivia section about this movie, is the young men chosen to portray the members of Team USA were chosen primarily for their hockey skills due to the intense nature of the filming. Acting ability was secondary. In fact, for most of them, this was their first major film. And I have to give them props too for their acting, even if they weren't very experienced. I felt that they were very convincing, and in fact, it may have been their lack of experience that helped them appear so natural on film. So when the filming happened, in particular the game against the Russians, wow, there was so much action happening. I can only imagine how long the director spent helping to choreograph that game. And based on what I also read about this movie on the Internet Movie Database, the director really wanted this to be as a realistic portrayal as possible. So I imagine that that game was choreographed based on what truly happened at the 1980 Olympics. Again, according to the Internet Movie Database, a few interesting facts about this movie. This film is considered to be one of the most accurate depictions of true events, including dialogue, and over 280 miles of film were shot, which is more than for any other Disney movie. I felt the story of this movie was really well put together. So granted, this is an historical event, but the way the movie was constructed for an audience, things can appear at different times and in different ways to create a dramatic effect, and I think that this movie succeeded. We are with Herb at the very start of his journey. We get to have a sense of the mountain that is before him, the huge challenge that he is up for. And there's a lot of pressure, not only to win, but also because the Olympic Committee took a risk in hiring him, and they don't want to be disappointed. In that sense, in some ways, his career is kind of on the line. So we see a lot of scenes where Herb is figuring out how he's going to buck up, how he's going to make sure this team succeeds, and how he's going to convince everyone on the team that they need to raise their game and take this seriously. Because if they don't, it's a reflection on him. So we see this mountain ahead of him, and we have a lot of scenes set up around that. But then we have the human interactions. We have Herb interacting with some of the players. Some of them are rebellious. Some of them may have injuries. We're constantly seeing how Herb has to keep raising the game for each player, helping them overcome obstacles so that they can be their best. And then we see how he has to navigate his family and his wife. While everyday life is continuing to happen at home, it can be hard to support a job that is so unbelievably special. And while Herb is singularly focused on the game, it doesn't mean everyone in his family completely understands that. It's not till probably close to the end where his family members, including his wife, are actually at the hockey rink, at the Olympic Games, when the team is playing Russia, that it seems they finally get it. They understand how consequential this game is, not just for the United States, but for everybody in the country, because the country is in such a difficult situation, and they want some relief, and they want some good news. Now, one thing I will say is this is an historical movie, and so it does depict what happened then, and that makes sense. You definitely see that things were different at that time. What Patricia Clarkson's character does as Herb's wife, the way she stands up for herself, that was pretty risky in those days. A lot of women wouldn't speak up to their husbands, or it would be seen as true feminism and women's lib, and might have been a little controversial at that time. Today, I'm not sure we would see it quite that way, but I think that's something important to take into consideration. This is one of those movies where you do want to get on your feet and cheer the team on, and you want to cheer Herb on, because you know that they are succeeding because of his vision and the way he worked with his team. So I definitely recommend this movie. It just shares so much about that historical time, and it shows how amazing it is when you see people using their talents and being the best they can possibly be. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most excellent movie, I would give this one a 10, for all the reasons that I've stated. I hope you've enjoyed hearing about the movies Bend It Like Beckham, which I rated a 9, Remember the Titans, which I rated a 10, The Rookie, which I rated an 8, and Miracle, which I rated a 10. Here's to these Disney feel-good sports movies offering you some inspiration. This is your host, Elizabeth Aaron, signing out. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Movie Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask you to please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Movie Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.